Like, we know that weight shift happens when we walk. Why wouldn't it happen when we run? And if you think about like valgus collapse, there's all kinds of downstream implications. If your head doesn't naturally shift over to your stance leg, let's say your foot's over here and your head's over here, and you know this more than anyone, your body's going to throw structure underneath of you to try and get some sort of stability underneath your center of mass. And that usually looks like some sort of dynamic valgus. It could look like a pronated, like you lose your arch of your foot, could look like hip drop. And so playing around with getting people to shift their head over their stance leg, for me, it has made me a faster runner, a stronger runner. It's made all of my unilateral exercises stronger,
Really?
way more stable. Like my ability to just like stand on one leg. That's another thing. Like you can test this right now if someone's listening to this. Like stand on one leg and try to have your head away from the leg that you're standing on. You're going to instantly fall away from that leg. And you see it all the time. As soon as you try and tell someone to stand on one leg, they usually fall away from the leg that they're standing on. You were about to tell me a story though about a client before we clicked in.
No, it wasn't a client. It was about a recent episode. Actually, it hasn't aired, so we'll save that. I don't want to come off bashing a podcast guest either. I have to sort through my thoughts before I share that publicly.
You're no fun, man.
It's just one of those scenarios where everything's going fine, and then you realize you disagree on something by a lot. And I guess the funny part is after, as soon as I started interpreting like her take on some nutritional based things, I was like, oh, okay, go on. And I thought it was just totally misguided. And then I really held myself back. I didn't want to push back. I didn't want to just, turn it into a debate. And then afterwards I was like, she was like, oh, so great to like disagree. And I was like, oh, I really held back on you. And then she said, oh, I held back on you. And I was like, oh, that's surprising. But
See, y'all should have just went in on it. It would have been, see, that's the thing, man. Like it sucks to say it, but the negativity bias, right? Like people will be more engaged in a debate. So, I mean, if you can do it in a good way where you guys aren't like attacking each other ad hominem, then let it go, man. Let it go. Just do it.
well, she brought up a topic, and I think I clearly knew a little bit more about it. So when I asked some questions that would like go to a deeper layer of what she brought up, you could tell she got lost really fast, and then try to like divert and change the duck. So I was like, oh, I don't want to make her feel bad. Like I don't want her to point out that she's, I don't want to say ignorant, but maybe a little, undereducated. It's like you could sometimes, and I'm totally guilty of this. Like you can know just enough to be dangerous.
Yeah. But
Um,
someone asked one clarifying question and now you're in deep water.
yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't want to. I mean, that's not my goal. My goal of the podcast is to empower people to play a larger role in their sense of well-being. I don't want to. If it was one-on-one in person, it'd be different. But if I'm broadcasting it, and I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. Like one time I was interviewing a doctor, and she had something that she believed, and I knew was 100% inaccurate. It was just like a reversal of the accuracy around the relationship of oxygen and carbon dioxide. And when I posed the point during the conversation of like, that we were talking about like the Bohr effect, I was like, that's why they would have people breathe into a paper bag to reduce anxiety or panic attack, is because it works, because of the carbon dioxide level increasing oxygenation of the tissue. And she had this look on her face like, oh yeah. And then so after, she was real distressed about it because she was the expert on the podcast. And I'm not implying I'm an expert. I generally don't trust people when they say expert. But she contacted me afterwards and wanted me to like edit all this stuff out. And I thought it was like a really healthy part of the conversation. I remember thinking, this is what people need to see. You're a doctor. You're not God. It's like, you're just a human. And I want to show people what it's like to have beliefs change, to question, to like to learn, to engage. Like it was a really healthy moment where you had a person with a lot of credentials being like, oh, I think I got that wrong. And I was like, how valuable is that? Like, I'm not trying to be right here. But that in itself is, like, really good. Like, I would love to see that on content that I was consuming.
Yeah,
But
and it would make other people like her more because it's like,
that's
"Oh,
what I was
she's"
trying to
yeah.
imply, and she was like, "No, no, 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 no." It was like she thought it would just jeopardize her whole reputation, and she agonized over it, and eventually I just edited it out,
You
and
know, that's
I
interesting.
part of me was like, "If you don't wanna do it, I just won't post the whole episode." And, but then I was like, "Well, then I'm just being a dick." Like, I know that she has insecurities and she doesn't feel comfortable with this, and I should just let it go. So eventually I let it go. I tried to be kind over correct or whatever.
She might be I think there might be a little bit of truth on both sides. Did you see how Alex Hormozy did an interview with Tony Robbins? Did you see this? This was pretty
I
recent,
didn't see the interview, but I
but
saw
you
the news
saw it, yeah.
stories, yeah.
So he took it down, and, a lot of people are like, "Why?" Because it was an amazing conversation, like, I loved it, and there's a theory that Alex took it down because it paints him in sort of a usually he's shown as like an authority in the sales space. Like people look up to him, they ask him tons of questions. He has a massive following. And Tony Robbins like dissected him psychologically, like no one ever has. Like he was stuttering over his words, he was sort of shaking at moments. Like Tony Robbins, I would imagine, has like this immense pressure and presence, in front
Sure,
of you.
yeah,
He's so tall and like the way he talks, like this booming voice. And so there's this thought that maybe, and this is speculation, who knows, that he took it down because it painted him in a different light than what he wanted it to be painted in. Maybe it was affecting his investors, maybe, like people backing out of deals and stuff. I heard something about that. Again, speculation, but yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about what would be the downstream effects of someone showing vulnerability. And like you and I would appreciate it,
yeah.
but other people might be like, see it as weakness. I don't know.
It's
Human beings
literally
are
one of
different.
the things that got me interested in podcasts originally. Like, I remember, uh, like, wandering in the dark in my mind back in the day and finding podcasts and hearing, like, the Rogans of the world, like, I would say, mm, alpha males being vulnerable, and
Yeah.
fucking loved it.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, this is, like, so nourishing for my soul to, like, listen and feel like I'm in the room with, like, men that like manly things, that are very comfortable with themselves and are trying to become better versions of themselves through vulnerability." And it definitely inspired me to be more vulnerable in my own life, which turned into, like, all kinds of different personal growth milestones along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
unfortunate for, and I haven't followed, watch a lot of Hermosi stuff, but, it's kind of unfortunate, but, I mean, shoot, if you have an opportunity to learn from Tony
Yeah.
Robbins, like,
I'd be stoked.
allow yourself to learn, you know?
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah,
Alright,
it's
so, we did put out, uh, an invitation for questions for us to explore, chat about, discuss on this, and, a few came in, so for the listeners out there, appreciate you guys, providing some questions and some interest that we could explore, and hopefully we don't get a violent debate over these things, but maybe there will be a little back and forth.
yeah, that'll
Um,
be good.
Seems like most of them were around more like movement related. So why don't we dive into maybe the first one that came up, or whichever one you want to start with in that category?
Well, I think it'd be cool to start with your Lawrence Van Lingen interview. Was
I
that
think
his name?
that's how you say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
enjoyed that conversation.
What was that? Say that again?
I really enjoyed that conversation. I like.
Yeah, it was a great one, especially when you guys got into weight shift and stuff. So I guess first, before I tell you my thoughts, you had mentioned to him that you had sort of a paradigm of like trying to keep your head still, and he had a different outlook on that. What is the thinking behind the head still
Okay,
thing?
so good question. So, well, for content, a little bit more context. I mean, we were talking about, like, what goes on with the head with gait posture or running, and should it be still? Should it move around? And I have found myself, especially now, granted, this might be a function of running on these fancy treadmills with the curve, because it is different. Treadmills are always different, and I like treadmills for certain things. I used to hate on them, but I like to be barefoot. I like to train as close to barefoot as possible, and I like the fact that on a treadmill, I can practice running barefoot and not worry about hurting myself with, like, debris or glass or stones or whatever. So I find that's one of the greatest uses of a treadmill, and the curved treadmills, I would say, designed to facilitate absolute speed. It invites you to run as fast, and I think it could be really helpful for kind of training some of the mechanics around running, in my experience. And um, but one, you're on a treadmill, you don't want to fall off. So there's this underlying like fear survival technique of like staying centered because there's only so much margin of error. I mean, a general treadmill track is, I think, like 22 inches wide. Like, they are the most dangerous pieces of equipment in a gym. It's the thing that
Easily.
you're most likely to get a legitimate, like, life-threatening injury, like a break your neck or break your face type thing. So there's some of that, but also there's something about, in a way, because of the slope, the ground is essentially moving away from you a little bit. So I feel like there's part of me that feels like the head is still, and then the body is compensating for all that extra movement below that makes that still. And I that's definitely not what's supposed to be when you're on ground. And I don't know if it's different when you're on there. So lately, especially since that interview, I've really been letting myself do the bobbing and weaving and thing when I'm on there, and it feels good, and I feel like I could be more relaxed and less rigid, and I've been working my sprinting, and I'm trying to sprint more relaxed and less rigid, and, I think it's helping that, and I think he mentioned the idea of, if you have a ponytail, it should be making like a figure eight, which is funny. Like, it's a big when I first got into running, and one of my inspirations into, like, when I was back in endurance training and diving into, um, like, triathlons. I mean, there's a lifetime ago where I've done, like, over 100 running races and over 30 triathlons, and one of the people in my life that really got me into that was my father-in-law, Sarah's father, who, um was in that stuff for a long time. And he used to say, and he didn't, he was a very smart guy, engineer, but he definitely didn't understand a lot of stuff around exercise, even though, like, he was running sub 40 10Ks at 40 years old. Like, he was a legitimate athlete. But he said, imagine like a spear on your shoulder that would always, and it would always point forward. And I'm like, well, that's absolutely wrong because there's like,
Oh,
even though
okay.
you're
So
moving
he's
in
saying
a
there's no.
yeah, and even
Okay,
though we're
I got
moving
you.
in a linear fashion,
Yeah,
like, gait, especially expressed in its greatest form of running or sprinting, is extremely rotational and dynamic. So, like, every step you take, even though you're going straight, you don't realize that you are rotating a good deal, especially through that thoracic spine. So, um, I knew that was wrong, but then, like, a step from that is, well, the head is still. The body can still move underneath. But then listening to Lawrence reference the weight shift, how your weight goes over, which makes sense. You would always want to have your center of mass moving towards the base of support. That would be like the natural thing to fight gravity. Like, if you ask an architect how they build a structure, you're gonna, so so that was interesting. And just having that in my mind recently, uh feel like is helping me. What's
yeah.
your take?
So I personally feel like this concept, I told you I've been kind of stewing on this for a long time now because I'm starting to notice one of the best ways of improving my clients' form with running, with lunges, any unilateral exercise, going up the stairs, is that side to side, getting your center of mass over your base of support. And I think, and this is a theory, I don't have any data to back this up, I think most running related injuries or even any sort of like knee issue that could happen during a lunge or a single leg squat or something like that is because of compensations downstream from not allowing your center of mass to shift properly over your stance leg. So, like one of you guys, I can't remember which one of you, you brought up EMDR. Was it you or was it
He
him?
might have brought it up. I don't
Okay.
remember. It was probably him.
Gotcha. So, um, are you pretty familiar? I know you've
Yeah, we had
yeah,
EMDR specialists on. I've tinkered with a lot of the concepts myself.
yeah, awesome. Yeah, so for the audience, if there's anyone listening, EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and I love this concept. I can't remember who I learned this from. It's probably like Andrew Huberman or something like that. But it's the idea of looking left to right in order to try and stimulate or simulate the natural left to right head movement that happens when you walk. And so the importance of that in EMDR at least is uh, if you can simulate that left to right movement, it's simulating that you're walking towards something, which if you're in a fight or flight state, that flight state is going to be bypassed because you're moving forward. It's sort of telling you that, hey, you're moving towards safety right now, which can help you if you're thinking or processing traumatic, a traumatic past, let's just say. It can help you sort of reshift the way that that stuff makes you feel. And so as soon as he brought out that EMDR, I was like, exactly. Like that is the connecting, that's the through line to all of this. Like we know that weight shift happens when we walk. Why wouldn't it happen when we run? And if you think about like valgus collapse, there's all kinds of downstream implications. If your head doesn't naturally shift over to your stance leg, let's say your foot's over here and your head's over here, and you know this more than anyone, your body's going to throw structure underneath of you to try and get some sort of stability underneath your center of mass. And that usually looks like some sort of dynamic valgus. It could look like a pronated, like you lose your arch of your foot, any number of different things. It could look like hip drop. And so playing around with getting people to shift their head over their stance leg, for me, it has made me a faster runner, a stronger runner. It's made all of my unilateral exercises stronger,
Really?
way more stable. Like my ability to just like stand on one leg, like that's another thing. Like you can test this right now if someone's listening to this, like stand on one leg and try to have your head away from the leg that you're standing on. You're going to instantly fall away from that leg. And you see it all the time. As soon as you try and tell someone to stand on one leg, they usually fall away from the leg that they're standing on. Very rare. Sometimes they'll fall in the opposite direction. But it's usually away from the stance leg.
So wait, you
So
think that your conscious focusing on shifting weight while running is helping you when you're moving slower, essentially?
I think focusing on it all together, but eventually it becomes motor patterning, motor programming, right? Like eventually you don't have to think about it so much. In the beginning, it's sort of awkward. Like I'm sure you're going through it right now as you're starting to be more mindful of that. You're like, it takes effort, but eventually as those muscles get used to that figure eight pattern that you were describing, like he said it with the hair, I think that's supposed to happen with your entire torso. Like this shoulder's supposed to drop as this shoulder comes up, this shoulder lifts up, and not so much from the shoulder, but more from the torso as you're going compression and then, spreading out this side. And then there's that rotation that you were talking about. And then they switch. This side comes up, that rotation happens. And you're just basically all that contralateral arm swing is bringing more of your center of mass to that stance leg.
Well, that's
That's
interesting to think of
that's
it that way.
why we
Yeah.
swing oppositely, right? That's the whole purpose of why we've evolved to have a contralateral arm swing.
Interesting. It's like physics are underlying everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. 100%, man. Yeah, I think and there's research to back that up. I mean, there are several studies that show that when you shift your center of mass over to the stance leg, it dramatically reduces knee adduction moment, which is essentially like that uh, medial force that comes into the knee. And then there's the opposite. When there's a failure, there was another study that when there's a failure to do that, it increases knee valgus or knee adduction moment, which increases those forces. So, and that could manifest as osteoarthritis on the inside or the outside of the knee, depending on the person's how their bones are structured. Everyone's a little bit different,
Yeah.
but yeah, man, I think
Yeah, I
this
mean,
is
you
a
have a lot of
really
things that could probably interfere structurally with your ability to do that. Like, I know when like, something that what I think about like, because I also am wondering, like, what if you go too far? Like, can you go too far that way, and what
yeah
does that do to the hip on that side? I mean, one thing that I've seen, with myself on one side, but also with countless clients over the years is, like, the back of the hip not really creating the proper, like, pocket when you go into hip flexion where the head of the femur kinda shifts posteriorly, like, the deep hip rotators in the backside of the hip create
Mhm.
like a hammock almost for that bone to sink in, and it could be super restricted for various reasons, and, but when you're trying to open that space up, what are you trying to do? You're trying to shift back. You're trying to kind of over exaggerate what would take place with the weight shift going to that side where you're trying to get kind of weight into the back of that hip with a lateral force to almost push into the hammock with the head of the femur, if you will, to create space. And go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and that's why a good place to start is just, like, standing on one leg,
Yeah.
right? Like, you're absolutely correct. Obviously, you could overshoot it, but it's gonna be hard to overshoot it just standing on one leg, you know? And then when they start to understand, "Okay, when I shift my weight over here, it feels much more stable," then they can start to play around with, like, a little bit of bobbing. I mean, you could even play around with, like, jump roping. There's all kinds of, like, before you get to running, try these things
Right.
first. And then even doing lunges, single leg deadlifts, like understanding that weight shift, understanding it on stairs. You know, when you take a step up, your weight needs to shift forward and to the stance leg so that you can push with that leg more efficiently. Like I've had clients, and you know this too, like the older they get, the wider their base of support gets. And that's creating that knee adduction moment at that valgus, that dynamic valgus. And so like just simply telling them, hey, like if your knees hurt going up the stairs, bring your feet a little bit closer together so that you're naturally just a little bit more over that base of support, you know? Instant changes. Like Greg, he was having some knee pain going up the stairs, coached him through that. Just that little small simple tweak. Knee pain gone.
Yeah, and I would assume it just neurologically facilitates you to organize better top down, where, somewhere in your brain, you're orchestrating all the little nuance of all the parts to kind of navigate through space and having your head in a good place and your weight in a good place relative to your base support probably facilitates that to all just be more efficient. It's interesting
It
too,
feels
like,
good.
yeah, it does. When you say it feels good, like the thing that stood out to me in practicing is the relaxed state, like the fluidity. Like I feel like when I'm allowing that to happen, or even vice versa, like if I relax and run, it naturally happens more. It's when I'm like rigid, trying to push it. It's like I'm forcing things where it doesn't feel right. But if I just kind of let go, it's like there's a smoothness and like what's the saying? Like you know,
Smooth as fast.
smooth is fast. It's like you get that feeling.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
still dog shit slow old man runner, but I do feel like I'm starting to get a little bit of adaptation now I've been back at it. And and yeah, I like it. And it's good for you. Actually, I have someone coming on soon that is like I feel like an idiot 'cause I forget her name, but a very experienced like master sprinter and
Nice.
track person. So interesting to get into some of the details of like the how to help the average person integrate like running fast into their lifestyle. Because I do think it's very useful. I think being working on speed in general is super useful, especially for the aging folk. Like there you do, it's one of those things I'm learning more as I learn about like what I guess you could lump it into like longevity that you're more likely to lose like the fast twitch stuff. Like you'll find old strong people, but it's rare to find old quick people. And that's the thing that you lose. And there's something about how I feel when I'm training it. Like I feel as much as I love strength training, I feel springier and younger when I'm doing fast stuff, powerful stuff and sprinting that I when I do a lot of strength training, I feel stronger, but I feel less limber and I don't feel younger. I don't feel springy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think people usually cite strength as one of the major causes of, let's say an old person falling and injuring themselves. But I don't think that's what it is. And, I'm pretty sure we've talked about this before. I think it's literally that they cannot move their limb fast enough
to
to
catch
like
yourself.
catch themselves.
Yeah,
Cause like if you can move your limb, it doesn't require that much strength to sort of stop yourself from stumbling.
that's a
It
good point.
requires, it's just a little bit of, hey, stepping strength and you're okay. But like, I think that's why I think you're right. Like that is a quality that you can neglect. And I think the best example of that recently was Mike Israetel. Now, I don't want to turn this into a bash Mike Israetel thing, but I did a video on him. He did a Navy SEALs like athletic test, and he could not do the broad jump because he couldn't land the
That's an
broad jump.
understatement. He could not.
Yeah. But I think the problem there is like in his training, he's so focused on slow eccentrics, like super slow, controlled. He does really deep squats. Like his range of motion is incredible on some of these really heavy squats. But if that's a very slow thing that you're doing, you don't have the motor patterning to do it fast unless you practice it. And so when he was then tasked with, hey, you need to do this jump, and then you need to sink into your hips quickly to stop that forward momentum from continuing to go, he just couldn't drop down fast enough and he just kept walking forward. And so, yeah, I think you're right. Like that is the thing to focus on for people is just simply whatever training you're doing. And that's the beauty of it, man. Like you don't have to change your exercises. You could just reduce the weight of some of the exercises you're doing and do them in a more explosive manner and sometimes try to utilize the stretch shortening cycle of those exercises. You could do it with bench press where you like bounce into a stretch on the pec and then use that to explode. That like there's so many different examples that you could do that with. But and that's why swings are great too. That's why they're the king.
Yeah, I love them, and, actually, I'm getting back into those too after a good time off, and, at first, feeling really rusty, coming back to the kettlebell, which for me, like, the kettlebell changed my life, like, I fell in love with it. When I was, discovered, like, Pavel back around, I think it was, like, 2010 or something, it was, like, life-altering for me, and, you know and really but also fell into the cult of like it's the best thing ever. You don't need anything else, which is silly too. Though it is arguably one of the most versatile tools in like I don't know the world of fitness. But after taking time off, it's like I used to be really good at I don't want to brag, but man, I I know how to.
Yeah, you were good.
I know I like from a form technical stance, and I think from my teaching ability, like I understood that tool really well. But taking like a year off, it was like, man, so rusty, like trying to coordinate speed. But now that I'm back at it, it's like, oh, it's effortless again and it feels good. And it's like a dance, there's something about these tools that you're, you're in a different relationship with it than you would be with like a more rigid kind of barbell type tool. There's a fluidity, there's a dancey relationship between you and the tool, and it's, like, coming back, and I'm, like, re-falling in love with it, and like you said, even the slow lifts I'm doing, like you just alluded to, like, you could change a load and go quicker. It's kind of embarrassing, like, what's on my bar for deadlifting right now or squatting, but I am working on, like, can I do that quicker? 'Cause I also have a history when I go heavy on those things, it goes well until it doesn't. I don't know if I have just too many, like, asymmetries in my spine, but every time I really go deep into a cycle and try to get heavy, it just at some point, I pay some kind of price. But it's like when it's light, I don't pay a price, but I could just tweak my focus and go faster. And that's been interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And, to be frank with you, it's not necessary to go crazy heavy, on deadlifts. There is a risk the heavier it gets. There's always going to be a risk. But that's with any exercise. It's not inherent to the deadlift. I think it's just the heavier it gets, the more away from natural your skill set has to get. You can no longer utilize the things that were relaxed and natural. So, like breathing, for example, and I know you're big on just like breathing nice and naturally, breathing in on the eccentric and breathing out, nice and flowy. And I think there's a lot of utility to that, and I think that would benefit most people in their everyday life. But when you get to 400 pounds, 500 pounds, like that breathing, that way of bracing, while definitely valuable, is not going to cut it anymore. You have to use something like a Valsalva maneuver, which is like a breath hold for people that don't know. You inhale at the top, you hold that breath, creating that chamber of air, that intra-abdominal pressure. And you hold that on the way down, and then you exhale as you stand back up with it. But like it's like little things like that that you have to dial in to get better, to get really heavy.
It's interesting how you put it, that you're departing from like what's natural when you go into yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and you
Yeah, man.
don't have to be that strong. You just have to be strong enough for the things that you want to do.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
the demands of life are absurdly easy right now, especially like in the scheme of history. Like the demands to be capable to manage what we actually face in today's world is it just doesn't take much. You don't need to do 2 times body weight, yada yada, whatever. It's
I do.
you do, but that
It's just ego, but
but
no, I'm
that's
just joking.
ego,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
I mean, I see, they make that claim of like, "Oh, you gotta be able to put the your luggage in the overhead compartment in the airplane." Well, I see like scrawny, unhealthy, weak looking people that can still manage that. Like, I don't think it really requires that much to get through today's life. Now, there are cases where, yeah, if you have a profession or a hobby that has just a greater demand, then yeah, you want to be strong enough. So, but if you are not a football player, then you don't need to be as strong as a football player. If your lifestyle is pretty chill. It doesn't take that much, so you don't need to be pushing the boundaries. But if you stop pushing anything, then you do lose it.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure what is the weight that would be deemed the most functional, and then like when do you start to depart from that when you're getting way too heavy. But honestly, man, I just love it. um I think there's like, if you find stuff you like to do, there's a lot of value to just doing that. Also, part of my thinking too is like, I like to be prepared. So like, if someone approaches me who has a 400-pound deadlift, like, I want to know what that feels like. I want to know how to coach that person up. If they're like, hey, I want to have a 500-pound deadlift, like, I want to know how to get them there, because the things that worked at 225, they're like, that person already knows that. If he's at 400 pounds, he's already maxed out all the coaching cues that got him there. And so it's been so interesting. Like, I swear, every time I step up to the bar to do RDLs, I figure out something new. Just like the weight shift. It's like little small tweaks like that where you're like, oh my God, like even just the way your pinky wraps around the bar. Like, most people totally neglect these fingers when they're gripping. But like, if you can curl your wrist a little bit more and get your pinky around the bar, just having that extra finger gives you way more stamina on the bar, right? Now all of a sudden you're using all of your fingers. But like at 225, that wasn't necessary for me to figure out. And then I figured it out at 405. And I'm like, oh, this is a big deal. Even getting away from the natural postures, like, I don't know how familiar you are with like thoracic rounding during deadlifting and stuff like that. Like, there's this debate, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, huge debate online on whether or not your spine should round. And I think generally your lumbar should remain pretty neutral, but I think your thoracic spine, it's okay for there to be some flexion going on there. And in fact, it would reduce the distance that you have to travel, because now your arms are reaching down further. And so I've been playing around with like this deliberate rounding of my thoracic spine before I descend. And I feel like it creates a single muscle across my entire back. And it's like a feeling that I've just never had before. Whereas like before, I focused on almost like extending, arching my back.
Yeah, that's how I've learned it, and that's how
Yeah,
I've
exactly.
taught it over the years, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's everything
I
I always
wish there was
learned.
a force of extension to fight the good fight against the sheer force, but there are extremely strong, extremely experienced people over the years that clearly are getting by just fine with a pretty hunched over looking T-spine.
Yeah,
And like,
exactly.
who am I to tell them that that's wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to think about is like, where are you the strongest? It is your capacity to extend your spine. Like, yeah, okay, maybe again, maybe that works at 225. Can you keep your spine extended at 405? You know, maybe that's not the strategy that you can use there. Maybe you have to allow a more thoracic rounded position. And that's what I did. And it's, dude, I'm never going back, to be honest with
Really?
you. Yeah, I feel so much better. I don't feel anything in my lower back ever. It's incredible. You know,
Do you
yeah.
think that's helping taking burden off the low back then somehow?
I do, yeah, I think it's the lats, I think it's your entire upper back, your mid and lower traps. It's almost like creating this, like I said, like a single muscle instead of individual muscles, like, instead of you trying to contract your erectors to maintain that position, you've just created this slab, and everything's just hanging off of that.
Interesting. Now, would you do that too if you were swinging like a significant kettlebell?
That's a great question. So when was the last time? I do no, but I don't focus on chest up anymore. So it is a little different. Before I used to focus on like keeping my chest up and like staying as tall as possible. Now, not so much.
Where do you
I
put your eyes on a swing then? Or deadlift?
about like 6 feet in front of me on the floor, you
Oh,
know?
so they're fixed the whole time?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. And that doesn't bring like your head down or forward at the top or
I just allow my head to stay in line with my torso. So as my torso comes down, my head's staying in that more neutral position. Very similar to like my RDL. You'll see like I'm not keeping my head up while I'm going down on the RDL. I'm just allowing my head to go down. Same thing. I'm kind of looking maybe 6 to 8 feet in front of me on the floor.
and your eyes are just fixed. So your
Yep.
eyes
And I,
wind up moving up and down,
yeah,
essentially.
exactly. And your head will naturally move a little bit because your eyes are fixed, but it's not
Was
a
clearly
dramatic
not
motion.
working because you look really scrawny on this video.
Dude, you're telling me, man, I'm ashamed. Um, but
Um,
yeah, man, it's been great. I don't know. We went off on a tangent there, but
let's get to one of the other comments that came in. And by the way, for listeners, if anyone's listening, I don't know if anyone is really listening, but if you are, please leave put a question in the chat, and you will give you priority here. We this is kind of a test if there's any interest in this live format, and we thought it'd be fun. So hopefully it's uh, I don't
give
know,
me 2 seconds. Let me
and gets allows people to engage a little bit with either me or Randall and bounce some ideas off. If you have any opinions of any things that we sent so far, and let us know in the chat. And now we're down a man. So I think one of the topics that came through, we had one about muscle loss during running, something regarding periodization, something about fasciitis. Which one do you want to hit those next?
Yeah, so I had Andrea Rodolfo of Nadia said anything that touches on periodization in a practical way would be interesting to listen to, be it with the purpose of organizing training phases, playing two different sports, or balancing physical activity with other important aspects. So actually that's interesting. So since you have a uh pretty deep history with endurance sports, like I'm not too familiar with your introduction into strength. Like when did that happen for you? Were you always into strength when you were doing like strength and power and kettlebells and stuff when you were doing those triathlons, or how
No,
did you balance that training?
yeah, not at all. Actually, it's funny. When I was doing endurance training, I I didn't know anything about strength. I didn't really know anything about movement from like a quality perspective. I just knew how to go out and like push myself to do work, and I would just and it started from being in a place that was really unhealthy, and I was just trying to like get healthier, and I just thought that was the thing to do. So I just started like running, and then I got addicted to racing, and I was afraid to stop my progress, so I just kept signing up for races. And then my like I said, my father-in-law was into triathlon, and in the town that I grew up, there was this like fairly famous Olympic distance triathlon that is like one of the more popular ones in the country, and it's like basically in my backyard, and it would pull a few thousand people every year. And my father-in-law rode did that course in 1984 on a 1983 Cannondale, that he still had, and it was the old kind of bike that had, like, the manual gear shifts, like, these friction things where you gotta push the button till you, like, feel the gear shift, had, like, 12 gears, now they have, like, 27 or 30, and, um and I decided in 2004, on the 20-year anniversary of him riding that bike on that course, to do that race on that bike, which is insane because by then it was an absolute dinosaur of equipment. And then I got into that, but that's sidetrack. I mean, I basically fell in love with just these endurance things and didn't know how to fuel myself for them, didn't know really how to train for them, had no idea how to take care of my body. And then got introduced to somebody who was an elite athlete. I mean, 408 miler in high school. So, which at the time was still like a few seconds shy of going to nationals. Or no, in college he was a 408. He ran a 408 in college. And he was fast. And on his like but I was faster than him on the bike. And one day a weekish we would train together, but he also happened to be like a super high level manual therapist. And if you're taking any training seriously, you're gonna have bumps on the along the road. Like, you're gonna need to take care of the machine. And, I was really lucky that I had him in my life, and he not only did he help me when things acted up and I had pains, like, he would just treat me and fix things, it opened my eyes to, like, the abyss, the complexity of the body, how my first rib on my left side would interfere with, like, how I was running. Or like back pain. And I was like, how is this possibly connected? And that was my first introduction to like really how amazing the human body is. And then, so I learned about that, still didn't know anything about strength. And he was an elite runner. So he was like sickly thin. They're like, there's a saying like an elite runner is like, if people aren't commenting that you look sick, then you're fat. I mean, these guys are, they're walking around 135 and they want to get to
You calling me
125.
fat, dude?
Correct. No, I mean, well, you're fast for you,
Yeah, for
but if
190
you've been around a legit runner, you're not shaped like them.
for
They
sure.
cannot you
I'm
can't
usually
score.
like one of the biggest people
Yeah.
at the
Like, I
race.
used to do triathlons at 190 pounds, very little muscle on that 190. I mean,
Fantastic.
I raced Clydesdale division.
I'm
Um,
not familiar with that.
it's like 200 pounds over.
Okay,
It's
gotcha.
like, because you can't expect, like, if you get off the bike, like, I would hammer on the bike, and I could hold my own and swim. I'd get off the bike, though, with a 10K to run in front of me on a hilly course at 190, and there's, like, a 145-pounder next to me running up the same hill. I mean, I might as well be walking. I might be going at that time, and I wasn't a great runner, maybe I'm running, like, a 7:30 clip. They're running a 5:30 clip. It's, like, different worlds. But anyway, and then, so I was in that paradigm for a while, learning about the body more than how to train it, like more like how to take care of it and then just do work. And then my mother-in-law worked in DC in a building that had a gym, and there was a RKC kettlebell instructor doing a workshop there on like basic, I think it was like an HKC thing. It was like the kettlebell swing, the get up, and the goblet squat or something. And this is in I think 2011. And I went to that workshop. She like got it for me as a gift because she just knew I was into like fitness. And it was like in her building. So and it was paradigm. And I remember, I'd never used my hamstring properly ever in my life. I'm in the car coming back from DC, like in tears how much my hamstrings hurt. Like, I had never been so sore in my life. I had never had somebody show me like how to hinge properly. And I remember I was using like a 16-kilo kettlebell with 2 arm swings. And I couldn't walk for like a week. And then I was hooked. And then that led me to learning about strength through uh through the world of kettlebells, and then seeked out like local coaches that were already trained in that as
I
you
got
you
you.
know. So that's kind of how I got into it. So as far as I never thought about, oh, I need to like retain muscle while I'm doing all this cardio.
Yeah.
Never really thought about muscle or strength.
Yeah, it's a different world, man. I think are you seeing this notification, by the way, at the top? It says one new chat message. Is that from YouTube?
Oh yeah, I do see something. Let's see.
Oh, it's, yeah, someone in the chat, HRM708.
Fat one at 190.
Oh, great. See what you started? No, yeah, I think, the hybrid movement, which is like basically people that want to run faster than lifters and lift more than runners, they catch a lot of slack. But I honestly, man, I love it so much. And whatever name you want to call it, like, I don't think it's that important, but I think the most important thing is encouraging runners to not emaciate themselves and, get down to 130 of a 6 foot tall person at 130. Like, come on, man, that's not healthy. And so there's these big movements to lift weights. And I think out of that has come your traditional periodization schemes. You can now apply them to get better at uh, running performance without losing your muscle and potentially even building muscle and building strength. Uh, like, I think about it, and there's like there's so many different ways you can do it. Are you familiar with daily undulating periodization, DUP? It's like changing the adaptation you're targeting throughout the week. So, like, for example, I have 2 leg days in my training schedule. I think it was UA Skater, one of my guys, that commented about this the other day. So shout out UA Skater if you see this video. We were talking about this, and so I have 2 leg days depending on when my run is. So I have 2 runs. I have a run following each of those leg days. But the big difference is my Monday run or my Monday leg day, I don't have a run for 2 days. So I have some time to recover there. Whereas my Friday leg day, I'm running the next day. Like, I did legs today, I have to run tomorrow morning. And so I can shift my focus where Monday I can get a bit more volume. I can do higher volume sets. I'm doing more exercises as opposed to just my typical 4 or 5. I might do 6 or 7 because I have an extra day to recover. But Friday is a pure strength focus. I don't care anything about hypertrophy. It's nothing but sets of anywhere from 1 to 6. That's it. And that way, tomorrow when I go on my run, it's not impacting my running performance. And you can do that on a micro scale with daily undulating, but you can also do that on a macro scale. So, like, I had a client who ran the San Diego Marathon. And honestly, all the people that I've coached for marathons, I've done something similar to this, where in the beginning of it, it's like a hypertrophy phase for 4 weeks where their running volume is so low, it's not such a big deal if they interfere with each other. But as their running mileage starts to increase into the 25s, 30s, 35s, their volume cuts way back. So now they're on a strength focus. And then getting even closer to race day, it's a power focus.
Yeah, that makes
You know, yeah, the weight gets reduced and they're focusing on explosivity. And runners do that in their running programs automatically, right? Like, you have your 3 different runs. That is daily undulating periodization, right? That's your long, easy run, your tempo run, and your interval runs. Those are all different qualities. And as the marathon training program progresses, you see that macro cycle switch as well, where some people won't even introduce intervals until like the final 6 to 8 weeks or so. And they'll just strictly focus on building an aerobic base for a pretty long time. And then they'll start to sprinkle in the max effort stuff. Some people, it's because there's a higher risk, they say, of injury from doing those harder runs. I'm not sure where I land on that. I understand both sides of the argument. I think, to me, it's a load management issue, right? Like, anything can be dangerous if you do too much of it. Your aerobic runs could be dangerous if you miscalculate how many miles you're supposed to do. So yeah, that's just to say, it's a long-winded way of saying there's like so many interesting ways of like periodizing your program. And even, sorry, one last thing, the Russians already knew this, where they would switch adaptations even just within weight training, where there's something called beginner gains for people that aren't familiar. I'm sure everyone's familiar, but you first start lifting weights, you're going to make a ton of progress really quickly, but eventually you're going to hit a plateau and you're going to have to get a bit more advanced in your programming and your techniques and all that stuff. And the Russians found out way back in like the 50s and 60s that if you switch adaptation focus, then you can tap into beginner gains again. So you could do, say, a 12-week program focused purely on hypertrophy, and then you switch to a 12-week program focus strictly on strength. So when you're hypertrophy, when you've accommodated that adaptation, you're switching to make sure that your body's not getting used to that again. And then you get the newbie gains of strength, and then you switch to power focus, you get the newbie gains of power, and you just keep switching back and forth and
Right.
however many cycles you want, you know?
Yeah, that's something that in my own training, I would say I fall short on, partly because I just fall in love with my current program all the time. Like I don't want to switch yet, and I ignore those signals and ignore those benefits. I'm actually probably not the best one to talk about periodization because my goals are to practice and to enjoy the practice. So I don't get very like I don't want to say like analytical about that. I mean, because it's not relevant to my goal. Now, I've worked with people in the past, and especially if they play a sport, like I think in the question they said, well, if you have two sports, that really depends on what those sports are. Like one sport might have a much lower physical demand and a much higher demand on skill where you don't, where the training for the one sport allows you to kind of coast through physically on the other one. And it's just about refining the skill, for instance, like if you if you played basketball in the winter and then you played tennis in the spring, like you might just need to work on tennis. You might not
Yes.
need to get
Yeah.
any more muscle or any stronger or any more powerful potentially. So except for maybe within like maybe rotational work, but um, so it really depends upon the sport. But I think it's important to I mean, it depends too. Like, are you trying to a professional athlete answers these questions so much differently. You know, if you're trying to like feed your kids with the outputs you're getting from how you're pushing your body is very different than if your goal is to like enjoy life and enjoy your sports. So it's a that's really like a case by case individual situation. But like you mentioned, there are benefits to changing gears. There are benefits of picking up those, like, even if you're not a beginner, there's still beginner gains as you introduce that new type of stimulus, especially if you have not been doing it. Like some people would argue, I think I heard, I think Mark Bell says a lot, like the most important type of training is the one you're not doing now. Like there's just
Mm.
something that you get when you are switching those gears. And me, because my goal is so focused on just like, I just love the practice. I do something and I just want to keep doing it. And I might run a program that I should run for like 3 months and I wind up running it for like 15 months, like way past, um, which I just am coming out of now. And it's not the first time. Like I might average 2 programs a year at most. Which and for me, what I'll do is I might shift something very similar so that all my programs might have all the same stuff, and then all I'm doing is, increasing one category and decreasing another category, but all those categories still might live within that program. And then after several months, maybe one comes down, one comes up. But it's more on, like, uh, mood. I don't have like, because I don't have a sport. My sport is, like, I don't know, try to feel good every day, whatever that is, you know? I'm gonna be 49. Nobody's picking me on a team. I don't have,
I'd pick you,
sport
dude.
oh,
Pick you in a
that's
heartbeat.
sweet. Well, I have picked up golf. So there's part of me that's like, "Oh, should
I'm
I?"
so excited.
I have all this background of, like, training. I've even trained, like, some pretty elite golfers, and I'm like, "Should I do anything in my training to help my golf game?"
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from. I think it's just different strokes for different folks. You know, my audience is a pretty sciency, I would even say probably neurotic audience.
I
You
can
know,
see
like
that. I wonder
we're
where you
all
get that from.
yeah. You know, like I love, like you mentioned, enjoy the practice, right? And like I enjoy my practice, no doubt about it. It's the tracking of the progress, it's the periodization, it's all these like little technicalities that make me, it enhances my experience, you know. And some people just like that. Like, you know, this sort of goes into the food tracking debate with calories and stuff, where some people love to track every single bite that goes into their mouth. They're like, they got their app, they're doing it, they're logging their progress, and some people hate it, and that's totally fine. I think the most important thing is individuality, like do what fits your lifestyle the best. And people work jobs, so like having some crazy advanced program, or if they have kids, like all of the above, having some sort of crazy advanced program might not be the best for everyone. That being said, I also like to assume that most people would want to do things in the most optimal way possible for their lifestyle. So like most people don't want to just half-ass something. I'm not saying you're half-assing. I'm just saying, like, if there are gains being left on the table, me personally, I want to know about it, because like I've done all this work, for years and years and years and years, and now I'm discovering, like, it's almost like each year a new world opens up, and I'm like, holy crap, like this, there's so much here. And then I just dive in and I start implementing, and then I see the payoff is the weight goes up, the weight gets heavier, my running performance improves, my body feels better, like, just going back to the weight shift topic, like no more nagging little knee thing on the lateral side. Like there's so many different benefits to it that it enhances me. But I totally understand it's not for everyone. It takes effort to be granular, and it takes tracking, and yeah, it's just different.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to answer the listener's question, it's really about, there's so many ways to introduce periodization, and it's an N equals one. So try one and be honest about, your what it does for you. Like, pay attention to what it does and how does that relate to your long-term goals. And if it works for you, then that's really useful information. And also if it doesn't, that's really useful information. And then let that inform your next decision going forward.
For sure. um
What else we got?
Balancing physical activity with other important aspects of life. um
Other important aspects of life. I mean, my one thing on that would be, your training should not detract from your life or your sport. The first thing to do is like not take away from your sport or for your life and your training. It should build you up. It should be nourishing, not just physically, but maybe like mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It should, I mean, I'm saying should, like, I'm not trying to put my values, and your values should be my values, but it, I would recommend that it allows your life to be better, however, how you see it, you know?
and what is nourishing? Like, nourishing could mean different things for different people, um I think you said something earlier about, like, maybe they just need more tennis, and I think that's a really important point, because sometimes, like, you and I'm maybe you've had moments like this, but I've had moments where I'm like coaching an athlete, and I'm like, is this lifting even doing anything, or is this person just gifted? Like, you see they're really good at their sport, or they're a really good runner just naturally. It's like, is the weight training actually going to make such an impact in their sport or racing or whatever? Or do they just need to keep doing that thing? Maybe there's like an injury prevention argument that you could make for doing strength training, but there's no need to go crazy with it. Usually it's just sport specific. Go do your sport and learn, like, learn different crossovers in basketball, like learn different things that other players aren't learning, that's going to make you stand apart from them. The strength training isn't going to make you do that. It'll increase your capacity to maybe do those things a little bit faster, or a little bit safer. But it's
Maybe,
sport specific. Yeah, maybe,
maybe,
exactly.
might make
But
it worse. I mean,
it could, yeah,
some
absolutely.
athletes are probably, they're good in spite of their training. It's like
Exactly.
their
Yes.
training might be actually detracting a few percent, and we'll never know. I mean, they're just so naturally talented. I think that is a real thing that exists. I mean, especially because trainers impose their ideas and they're just not always right, and they have their ego. They're showing up to a job looking at through the lens of their experience or what they learned, and they might have no idea what it's like to be that talented athlete,
Exactly.
because most people will never be an elite level athlete. And I've seen elite athletes up close, and it's a different thing. It's like, whoa, like how is this person creating that power? This was not taught, there's no drill, like, and there are people that work ethic their way to that aren't as naturally talented, and because of their training and their insane dedication could play, on the court at the same time with that naturally talented person. But I think there are people that they're just so good. It's in spite of the training.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, you could actually make it worse, like, if someone has super tight hamstrings and it's making them explosive on the court or the field, and you're like, "Hey, you have tight hamstrings. I want to improve your flexibility in your hamstrings." You've now made them less powerful, or like any number of different things. Maybe their right foot turns out a little bit and you're like, you focus on that. You're like, "Oh my God, that's an asymmetry." But you could actually injure them because they've ran for 10 years with their foot like that. All of a sudden, you're changing them during a race training program, like, "Hey, I need you to straighten that foot out. We're going to do this thing. Straighten your right foot out." They start straightening their foot out. Their body's not used to doing that. And now they're running 12-mile runs, 15, 16-mile runs with that new gait pattern. Oh man, that could be totally a disaster. So 100%, man. It's like, it's such a fine line. Like, how do you really decide what intervention? And that's like, honestly, these days, like, my training becomes more and more simple. It's less volume and less advanced things, like just sticking to the basics, the meat and potatoes. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the other, I guess it's maybe adjacent to that, one of the other pitfalls that somebody could have when training, when they have a sport, is to try to make their training look like their sport.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, that's a huge
I've
thing now.
seen like young football players doing really strange, like push press versions with barbells where they're staggered in their stance and they're bending. They have just a huge extension in their back, and they're like trying to line gravity up so it represents hitting someone in front of them if they were on that angle. And I think that is probably not effective and probably dangerous. Like, you're better off just train the push press in its pure form for all the benefits and then go play football. It will translate. If you're generating
Exactly.
force down into the ground and channeling it and transferring that and applying that through your hands well, and then you go on a football field and you do that thing in the context of football, the strength and power that you get from that push press will translate. You don't have to make it look like that. On the flip
Yeah, I mean, this
similar, like, I remember training this is almost like flip side of the coin. I remember training a golfer who's like a scratch golfer. I think he was like number 2 at his college, so, not pro, but, maybe could have the potential if things went well at that time, and, doing, like, rotational ball throws, like, one at a time, just working on that explosivity, and I remember like seeing what I would consider terrible form on the side that he golfs from. Like, he's a righty, and what I would consider really good form on the other side. And I'm watching that like, well, I'm not messing with that. Like, my instinct, if it was anyone else, I'd be like, okay, you're losing so much posture in this throw. But they were naturally so grooved in that pathway from golf that they were throwing the ball just like their spine moves when they golf. And I'm like, golf is such a sport of like feel, like, and timing. I don't want to tinker with that.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's
so
motor programming.
what's that?
It's motor programming.
Yeah, so, like, if I make that look what I consider anatomically correct, I might ruin their fucking golf game.
And you might injure them. Yeah, I mean,
I would probably lose a client. I might injure
yeah.
them.
Yeah, man. I mean, that kind of goes into the functional patterns thing, like they're all the rage these days. Everyone's in a massive debate in that realm. And their thing is like trying to make their lifting and cable stuff look sport specific. And they're like totally bashing on the traditional barbell and dumbbell lifts. And it just, I don't understand how they can bypass your ability to, like you said, just do the regular push press, right? Like you're going to build so much more strength and power doing the simplified version. You can load that way more efficiently. But even just like a squat or a lunge, a regular lunge, instead of doing some 3-step rotational lunge with a punch or something, which you now can't load it enough because it's too complex of a movement, right? And one muscle is going to give out before your target muscle can even get the work that it needs. So you're way better off just doing the squat or just doing the lunge or just doing the push press. And then, like you said, go do the sport specific stuff to learn how to express this newfound power and strength that you got in the weight room. Like, to me, that seems like such a simple concept. But yeah, I don't know, man. But hey, dude, we could end up, like I said this in one of my functional pattern videos, we need a professional sports team. We need their strength and conditioning coaches to adopt a functional patterns style approach. And we need to see what happens.
Hmm.
Like, I don't think this
Have
argument's
a real
ever gonna,
experiment.
yeah, like that's the only way this is gonna get settled
Yeah, because
because
those
like,
guys act like their stuff is the best, but it's like, well, where are the elite people doing it? Where are the when there's $100 million on the line, is anyone doing it and succeeding?
right, exactly. Yeah, mostly their reviews are just like people that had scoliosis or had a severe kyphosis and like they fixed it. But at the same time, like they're like, oh, they're pain-free now. But they also changed like 5 different things. They lost 20 pounds, they're drinking more water. Like there's all these other reasons, right? Like you can't say that it was those specific movements that made this massive change in their body. Maybe it did. I'm not saying it didn't, but like in order for you to confirm that, like I don't see how you get
Well, it
there.
might have a great place. I mean, there's so many tools, the task is find the right tool for the scenario. Um, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it would be very surprising. I mean, the thing is that experiment's not gonna run. Like, the chances of when there is a lot of money on the line, revamping and having a dramatic change in the program.
Someone commented on one of my videos and said something about a Canadian rugby team is starting to incorporate some of that stuff. It might not have been Canada. It might have been New Zealand, or I think it was Canada.
Yeah, but they'd have to
Uh,
eliminate all the other stuff that they would claim is counterproductive.
right. How do you do an actual
Yeah.
experiment with it? That's the hard part. But hey, I mean, even just in an additive model where you're just adding it, if all of a sudden, their injury rate
Oh, yeah, that's what you
drops
would
way down, it's information, it's data,
yeah, and that
at the
would I
very
would
least.
think that would be the best case scenario that you would hope for is that, yeah, people would just get hurt less.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're definitely not going to get strong. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not.
Yeah. We're
um,
a little over an hour. You wanna keep going? What are we doing?
dude, I'm game if you are. If
What
you have
was the,
anything.
let's see. Well, we didn't really get into the specifics of the muscle loss with running.
Okay.
Was there any that could maybe, um, just kinda branch off that last talk? I mean,
Yeah.
there's different components to that come to mind for me. One is, like, the nutrition side, because depending on how you're running, y you're to build muscle from what I understand, you need, like, obviously an exogenous signal, like, you need the mechanical demand that you have to be running so that there's a part of your brain that believes you wanna divert resources to be more efficient or better in some way at that. But also endogenously, you need signal, some kind of signal of abundance, whether it be like total caloric intake or some threshold of protein, some hormonal signal that things are okay and it's a good time to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the first and foremost, nutrition is probably the biggest thing, specifically for running and muscle. Because, like, if you're not getting enough calories, obviously your body is going to get rid of muscle first. It's metabolically expensive tissue to hang on. Especially someone like me. Like, I'm very heavy. I am under no um, delusion that like this is an efficient build for running. It's not at all. Like, and my body probably feels that. Like, holy shit, the oxygen demand on this guy is crazy. You know. Um, but I think that should come from carbohydrates, and I think sugar. Like, there's this big debate now. Like, I know, like,
Dare you?
uh, how how do you feel about the fact that Paul Saladino now eats fruit and honey, and now, most notably, he's back to eating vegetables?
Is he? That I didn't know. Well,
Yeah.
first of all, I love Paul Saladino. He helped inspire me many a times. He's been on my podcast twice. Um, I can't stand some of his content he makes, but I love him. I think he's been just a great person in the, I don't know, wellness sphere over the last decade that's helped a lot of people. And I think the fact that he's changed his mind about things is fantastic. And I mean, in fact, the second time he came on the podcast, it wasn't really talk about food. It was to talk about the changing of the mind. And, the idea of when you write a book, you're like putting it in there. And for some reason, we have this expectation of people to stick to their guns, and it's, like, so dumb. Like, we do with politics, like, "Oh, well, you're a flip-flopper." It's like, you should want to think different things a year from now than now, because if you're not, then you've given up on growth. Like, it's something that we should hold valuable in society and look up to people for, that look how that person changes beliefs, and, like, that should be inspiring that, like, what would it take me to change my beliefs about something? Or, um so, and I've gone on, I'm gullible. Like, I follow all the food fads. I've tried all the ones I know of. I'm sure there's ones I haven't tried, but um, I mean, I was super duper low carb for a long time, and I think it was great until it wasn't. And I think he experienced something very similar. And then adding carbs helped me a lot. And like in the case of the running, like you said, carbs are important. It's not rocket science to know that carbohydrates spare protein. So if you want to spare muscle or build muscle, then you don't want to be tearing down muscle. And it's carbohydrate that allows you to get that signal that you don't need to break down your muscle to make sugar because it's there. Now, you could argue that fat spares carbohydrate and you can rely on that as a fuel source. And some people seem to do that really well, and some people don't. And I think that's a really interesting thing and confusing thing. Um,
I think
yeah,
it
as far
depends
as
on the intensity
yeah, I
and
wonder
the duration.
what the take is on Saladino eating vegetables. Like, I wonder if he felt. I know that there's a common thing, especially when people get sick, that they really wind up whittling down their foods for a while, and they find that the fewer foods they eat in general, the better they do. But then eventually they get introduced more, and I think a healthy gut can handle more things than an unhealthy gut. And I wonder if for some people, you could have the same person that vegetables serve really well, but in a different state of their life, they don't. There might be some of that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, the first thing you said, you think it's good when people do change their mind, and I think that's yes, that is the most important takeaway of like all of YouTube and podcasts and all that stuff. Like people should be able to um, publicly change their mind and not be attacked for it. I think the problem, though, is the use of absolute language. And so that makes it harder to change your position publicly because you've been like bashing all these other things. And so now all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a second, I have to take advantage of some of the stuff that I was just bashing a year ago. And people are like, well, come on, man. As opposed to like a better approach is like Mark Bell. You brought up Mark Bell. I love his new approach now. He has his own little, it's almost like a video blog series where he'll literally just turn the phone on and start yapping while he's walking. And he's just like trying shit. And he's not bashing anything. He's just like, hey, this is what I'm doing right now. This is the effect that I've had. It's been pretty cool. If you want to follow along, here's exactly what I'm doing. But he's not going out of his way to talk crap about the other thing. Like he did that sugar diet, which I'm shocked you have not tried that yet with how much you love glucose. He's like, maybe. Dude, it's people eating nothing but like sugar, but a lot of people are doing like candy and stuff too with it. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. But
I have
yeah, you're right.
I have noticed though on days where I just do like energy based macros, like carbohydrate, like no protein first part of the
Yeah.
day and save it for later, that something good happens that I'm scared to admit because I don't
Like what?
like. There's something about having a lot of carbohydrate in the day, like start your day with a little bit of fat, a lot of carbohydrate, and really be in no rush to have your protein. And there's something to be said for my energy. I don't know what it is about protein, if it's the demand to digest it that I feel like slows me down. And I love protein, but I don't know. Like maybe I'm getting a little piece of whatever people experiment on that sugar diet thing. But
Yeah.
like I like how carbohydrates make me feel from an energy standpoint. And yeah, I don't know why I haven't tried that. I did see that he experimented that, and I think he got shredded from it, if I
So
recall.
he
Like, a lot of
says,
people got shredded
and
from that sugar diet.
yeah, but is
But
that
like I
from the sugar or is it just from eating less food? You know, that's the big $1,000,000 question,
I don't
you
think
know?
so. I mean, there's a mechanism that I think is fairly well understood from it around metabolism, and I know we differ on how much metabolism could change, but I think it could change, like, way more than I think you think it can change from day to day or week to week or within a person, but I think they are, tapping into some of the components of that, that are some of the things that influence that. Um,
Yeah. Well, that's outside of my wheelhouse, but, something you said you feel like you're getting a piece of what people are getting in the sugar diet. Like, I hear that, and part of me wants to be extra cautious because of topics that you and I have talked about before with, like, fasting is a perfect example, right? People say, "I feel great on fast while I'm fasting," not understanding that stress hormones feel great, right? So, how do you know that the good feeling you're experiencing is some sort of, like, really positive physiological experience or something else? You know, I think the most important thing is, like, we don't know, right? Like, this is a brand new thing. I think the sugar diet exploded like 6 months ago or something like that. There were probably other pockets of people talking about it, but it really started taking off here pretty recently. And now everyone's talking about all these potential mechanisms and all that stuff. But the truth is, like, there's no studies to back it up, you know? So I don't know, man. I just, anytime I hear feel, I'm extra cautious. And that's why I like tracking my strength numbers, you know, all these different, like, that's where to me the more neurotic approaches can be handy because they are actually giving you objective metrics to look at and say, okay, I felt really good today, but actually, like, pulling 405 was like so much harder today. Why is that? Like, why am I weaker despite feeling better mentally? You know, I'm not saying that's a real thing that's actually happened. That's just a possible,
it's
you
funny
know,
because
example.
when in my experience, when I track very analytically in my training, I feel like I get disconnected from my body, and
Mm,
I'm chasing numbers. I push through workouts that I shouldn't push through. Like, I make poor decisions for me because I want the paper that I'm writing on to look a certain way,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's fair. Totally fair.
And everybody's different. Like, but I really appreciate the listening. Like, I feel, especially as I go to, it's more and more important for me to listen. Like, how, like I'll start a workout where I might warm up and then I'm making a judgment after that. Like, how am I feeling? That's going to dictate what kind of day should I make this as far as like
I do the same.
percentage
Yeah.
of capacity. And I'm, as I get what I think to be wiser, um, I'm quicker to be like, this is a day where we don't train. Like, this is a day where I'm just gonna do another half hour of flopping around on the floor and I'll take a walk. Like, I'm not gonna train. And I know that my next train the thing that I love about that is I've done enough reps of that, that I know that the next training session, I'm gonna feel strong if I do that. But if I push through, I'll get a shitty session and I'll probably get shitty sleep that night. I'll have like a cascade where I'm like recovering when all I had to do was listen to my body. So, you know, it depends, you know, everybody's different. And, you know, maybe when you're younger or if you're just generally more resilient person, maybe being in it, like you seem like a pretty resilient person. Like you might be able to thrive on numbers on a page more than me for whatever reason.
Yeah, for sure. Individuality, man. That's what it's all about.
So why is I
How
gotta
to
circle back. Why is
Yeah.
Saladino eating vegetables now? What's his pitch?
I don't know. That I don't know. This was just a video that I just saw probably about a month ago. Um,
I eat those
but yeah,
sometimes. I'll eat
something to look into.
lettuce is a vegetable. I'll eat lettuce.
Yeah.
and I'll put some
Um,
little bit of carrot on it, cucumber. That's about it. I do have a salad during salad season. I won't be having a salad in the winter, but
yeah.
that's my vegetable intake. It counts.
Hey,
Count it.
whatever works for you.
Count it.
He's tracking it.
Get
He's
that
like
folate
one
in those
vegetable,
leaves.
two vegetables. Okay, so bringing it back to muscle and glucose, and I think I can't remember why we got on Saladino, but you did something you did say was for whatever reason some people can thrive in certain. I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember exactly what you said, but some people can thrive on a low carb diet for certain exercises. And I think, and I had said that it depends on the intensity, it depends on the duration. Like there's these people, carbohydrates are a performance enhancer. There's no getting around it. There's tons of data on this. Like there's this guy, Andrew Kutnick, he's a PhD, he's a biomedical researcher, and he's like, honestly, he'd probably be a great person to have on your show. He's not like huge, so he might be pretty accessible to you. But yeah, he's not like, he doesn't demonize carbs, but he basically is trying to push back against the idea that you need carbohydrates to perform well, or you need carbohydrates to like build muscle and all this stuff. And I agree with him, but he'll throw in these caveats like carbs can give a small performance enhancement, particularly for workouts that last more than 45 minutes or are of sufficient intensity. Now, when I hear someone say that, I'm like, dude, that's like 90% of people's workouts. like most people are training for probably close to an hour. And if they're trained like me or you, they're usually going to be doing some sort of intensity. Like most of my lifting days are pretty freaking intense. And my running is intense these days because I'm not doing long, slow, easy stuff to make up for the fact that I'm not running so much. Like I only do 2 runs a day. So both of those 2 runs a week. So both of those runs are going to be either intervals or zone 3 tempo work, which that's going to be of sufficient intensity, no matter how much you strike, how much you try to twist it. And so, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know where I was going with that, but that's just to say that that's a stupid idea. I'm just going to leave that there.
You mean, do you think it's stupid that carbs are only good under those circumstances?
No, I think it's
Circumstance. Is that
stupid
what
to
you're
try and debunk carbs
Oh.
while also giving this caveat that basically proves carbs, you know?
What about the people that are low carb that are doing well? Like I do see people in the ketogenic state that seem to be doing really well for a really long time and have really high level of physical performance.
Doing well in what regard? Like marathon training or like what are we talking about here?
Um, I would say like there's somebody that stands out that I see on my feed a lot, I guess. And I would put it under the like CrossFit category. I think he trains out of CrossFit gyms. Things that I would think carbs would be really supportive for, and seems to be really physically well and performing at a very high level and building muscle, like clearly building muscle over time. Don't think there's juice involved. You never know online, but I really don't think so. He's actually involved with clinical studies himself. I don't know if he's like going for his PhD or something, but doing studies on like the ketogenic diet in the context of CrossFit. But I believe him. I don't agree with him, but I believe him. But I also like I see, the Sean Bakers in the world, and I wonder what allows some people to do so well. Is that a genetic variation where they're just better at that when there's so many people that do well until they don't,
Right.
and then they
Yeah.
come back to carbs?
Yeah, I think 2 major things that come up for me is going back to the athlete and strength training. Are they getting better in spite of the strength training? Are they just gonna get better? And like I look at a Sean Baker, genetic abnormality for sure. He is an exception. He is an exceptional human being. Just his height, his like
Dude.
him being carnivore is not the deciding factor in that. It's great that he's been able to do some, and maybe, so I don't want to say that so definitively,
Mm,
is not
yeah.
such a major percentage of why he is successful. I think he would be successful in anything with whatever diet he chose to be on, whether he was doing like a sugar diet or a well-balanced diet. I think he would just be a beast. And I think that's very common too. Like the people that you see that stand out. And real quick, was the guy keto that you're talking about, the CrossFitter, or was he carnivore?
Carnivore, but I mean, I don't think there's any carnivore that's not keto that's doing well over time. I don't
Sure.
I don't buy that you could do a low fat carnivore for very long.
Right, right. Yeah, so and I think that's the key point. Until when? Until he doesn't feel good, right? Like, so like he's thriving now, who knows how long he's been doing it, and there's so much that could go into that. Their body dimensions, like, do you know how tall this guy is that you're talking about from CrossFit?
He's probably tall, 6'1" ish, maybe.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I met him. He's
Okay, cool. Yeah, because that stuff can play a massive role, even just playing tricks on your eyes. Like you see someone through a screen, if they're like a YouTuber or something, like, man, this guy's jacked, but in reality, he's like 150 pounds and he's like
no,
five foot
no, this
seven.
guy's jacked. He's more jacked than when I met him, for sure. I
Okay.
watch him and I'm like, and some of the comments he makes, I'm like, oh God, that's so wrong. I'm just like, that's just metabolically incorrect. This statement, like, but I cannot ignore like he's doing well. And my own experience, like when I cut out especially when I cut out fiber, like things improve. Like I feel better in many ways. It's just I've never run the experiment long time. I went keto for like a while and um actually I I don't know, like I hit a wall and it might have been for other reasons, so I don't really have like clear data of like did I need to stop because that was a problem or was it other things that were going on that were a problem? But, but, I wonder, like, is that something that everybody can do? You just need to adapt. I hear weird things about, like, you see people's T3 goes down when they don't have carbs, but their receptors become more sensitive, so they don't need as much T3. I'm like,
Mm,
I don't know,
yeah.
maybe. But then I see things like I think even Sean Baker, I think his A1C has steadily like gone up over time because his liver is obviously making sugar, you know. Um, so yeah, I don't know where the balance point is. I don't know what's ideal, and I know that we're adaptation machines. So like, who maybe just because there's been a lot of studies on what's optimal doesn't. It's like compared to what? It's not like they compared it to every other scenario that's possible. Like there's a near infinite scenarios that are possible because you have the person itself with all their genetic variations, and nobody's diet is going to be exactly the same as someone else's.
And no one's doing the perfect experiment either, like that, the actual due diligence that's necessary to even find this stuff out. No, I think keto, carnivore, I think they're great for endurance sports. I think going into weight training, like Andrew Kutnick, the guy that I brought up, he mentioned sufficiently intense, like a really hard leg day. So I think in those sorts of scenarios where you're doing longer bodybuilding-esque sets of, if you're doing squats and you're doing sets of 10, 15, 20, really heavy and you're going to failure.
15,
And
20.
dude, there's a lot of people that do that, man. It's high volume versus low volume. You're not familiar with this argument. I'm in the low volume camp, by the way. Um, but yeah, so like that's going to be a brutal set of squats, and it's those situations where carbohydrates come at, as mentioned by Andrew Kutnick, biomedical researchers. It's not my idea, and the evidence backs this up. Uh, that it would thrive. But anything that's like a lower or moderate intensity steady state, like endurance running or even CrossFit. Like I think sometimes people overestimate how high of a heart rate people get during CrossFit, during high rocks, hybrid rock star, hate that name, but that's like all the rage these days.
Is
Everyone's
that?
into that.
You gotta teach me real quick. What's
It's like CrossFit with endurance running mixed in between. So it's like a track with not wall balls. I don't even know what they're called. Where you throw the ball up in there and you catch it and you throw it in the air again. Don't hold on a second, my camera's freaking out. Um, but it's basically CrossFit with more endurance running where you keep running laps around a track. But one of the guys who won it like a bunch. He's won it a ton of times. His average heart rate was like 150, like low 150s. So it's
You're
not like
saying that
he's,
that it's lower than people would think.
yeah, like, that's not even like a tempo run. You, well, depends on what you're aiming for. Obviously, you got to be more nuanced than that. Typically, when I'm doing a zone 3 tempo run and I'm like trying to sprinkle in some sort of, race pace work, I'm in the 160s, like no doubt about it. I'm not going to be hovering in the low 150s. That is zone 2 for a lot of people, low 150,
Really?
depending on their age, and there's even a good argument to be made against that too. Like, is the age model even accurate? The, 220 minus your age to figure out your heart rate zones and all that stuff. That could have some crazy variability too.
Oh, it's
Um,
yeah.
what's that?
It has to have variability.
Yeah, for sure. But my point there is like saying, when we finish, watch some High Rocks videos if you have some free time, and you'll be like, oh, dude, these guys
I wouldn't wanna watch.
their heartbeats must be beating out of their chests, like these people, but they're not. They have figured out how to be so efficient and smooth, just like you have to do with running. Like running a race, you have to pace yourself. You have to run at a pace where you can keep your heart rate manageable over time. If you run too fast and your heart rate spikes, you're going to gas out. Oh, by the way, that's due to carbohydrates. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I don't know, man.
Right, but the body can be trained in the absence of carbohydrates to use those fats as fuel,
Depending on intensity level.
Right, but depending upon intensity, but
So let me put it this way. Could you?
people
Yes.
have ran marathons on a
Sure.
ketogenic diet. That's
Yeah.
intense no matter how slow you're going.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to, possible does not equal optimal,
For sure.
right?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm getting to is like,
Yeah, give
can you?
Sean Baker
Yes,
a
absolutely.
spoonful of honey, and does he knock his erg down another 2 seconds or whatever?
Right. Who
Who
knows?
knows?
Um, but yeah, it looks like we got a few more comments. I just noticed that.
I think that's just Sarah saying, "I see you guys."
Okay, cool.
Thank.
Hey, Sarah.
It's funny, the question that came in on the post from the other channel, our audiences are so different. I had a question from, ooh, I'm not gonna say this right. Shreya Mathur dash PAR. How to create healthy boundaries with clients during healing sessions. How different of a question is that I get than you get?
Yeah, and like, what does she mean? I'm assuming it's a she, Shreya. What does she mean by healing
Wasn't
session?
clear on the modality, but I could maybe speak in general terms. So, I mean, I've worked with clients many times over the years, and I think one of the things that can make someone good at helping other people, especially in like a one-on-one scenario, can also be the very thing that makes them have issues with boundaries. So I think if you're skilled at helping people one-on-one, whether it's, in the physical well-being world, if it's, it could be Reiki, it could be acupuncture, whatever it is. I think the quality that could make you connect with people and do that for the right reasons where you're really passionate about helping can also probably open you up to be maybe more emotionally porous, if you will. Um, where maybe you're taking on, maybe you're dealing with people where you're hearing a lot of about the stress in their life, and then you're taking on some of that stress and bringing it home. Do you hear so I could see that. I mean, I think that could probably happen in a lot of different professions.
I certainly experienced that with training. A lot of times, I mean, dude, fitness is like arguably one of the most personal endeavors that someone could partake on. And you teach someone how to lift weights, teach someone what the proper diet is, all this stuff. But if you don't address the root cause of why they're overweight or why they're falling into these stressful patterns in their day-to-day life, none of that matters. And they're just going to keep reverting back to the same old habits. So it requires getting into like some super personal and deep conversations with people. And you're right. And that can affect, back when I lived in Maryland, there were days where I would come home and I just like could not talk because of just like a deep, really super deep conversation I had with a client that I just didn't have anything left. to give to Jackie, who I was dating at the time, or just anyone, So yeah, I think it's any profession where you're getting personal with people like that, there is a potential there for it to, like you said, for the person to take on some of that stress. Yeah.
But that's also where some of the greatest joys from that job could be. Like, I remember I would love in the gym where I looked at it more like I'm going to help facilitate you to build a better relationship with yourself. And in hopes, in turn, that's going to change all your relationships with everything else in your life. And I found it so fulfilling to help somebody through exercise, through learning how to like change our relationship with themselves, would speak to their kids differently and build a strong relationship with their kids. Like there's just nothing better for me than that stuff. So, but on the flip side, like in some adjacent professions, if somebody's coming in because they need healing, they're suffering, like there's pain there. And there's a good chance that you're going to be a sounding board for a lot of that pain. And if you're, the type of person that can see them well and see their pain in a way to that maybe you're in a position to help them with it, you're also maybe in a position to take that on. So, as far as like a strategy, there's a couple things that come to mind. One would just be like the awareness, like the fact that you can, if you practice being able to notice when you are doing that. So, if you notice that you feel like you are dysregulated yourself in your nervous system because of whatever session you're having, maybe you're dealing with someone that's under a lot of stress and they're verbalizing that stress and and it's kind of coming at you. If it's triggering you, the first step would be to know, to like shine a light on it, like, oh, this is what it feels like, to be present with that person. This is what it feels like to feel myself be affected by this person. And I think just flexing that muscle, that act of observation over time would probably be able to change behavior, but also just having some type of anchor practice where you do recognize that. And that might be, after acknowledging like that this is happening, it could be just in your mind, like, taking a few breaths, like, can I slow my breath down? Can I feel my body? Maybe you have an anchor where it's like, I want to feel the bottom of my feet on the floor, where your attention rests somewhere and you connect to your body and you have some kind of signal that, like, I'm here and I'm safe. Like, I am not this person's experience. I am making space for this person to maybe feel seen or to, to be who they need to be right now. And I don't need to carry that on. Maybe I can be a friend that can hold a mirror for them to see um, maybe, themselves in a different lens. I don't need to absorb it, but I could help ricochet it back in a gentle way so that they can sense um, their experience in like through a different lens and maybe build a different perspective or relationship of what's going on. And then maybe if that all fails, like if three breaths don't work or whatever, and you just feel like you get triggered easily from your work, there is a now granted this costs money, but it's not a lot. There's a tool that Sarah and I have both used, and I've actually had a while back. I had the guy, the inventor, on the podcast, but and there's probably a lot of tools in this category. It's an Apollo Neuro, and it's like a vibrational sound device that you could put on like your wrist or your ankle. And it's like soothing. It's like a stress reduction thing, like an anxiety reduction thing. It could be used for like other stuff too. But what I like about it is that you could put it on while you're at work. You don't have to like stop what you're doing. So you could be in the presence of somebody that might be under a lot of stress or just like throwing their life story at you and then it's coming at you. And you could have this like nervous system regulator going on in the background so you could stay present and be chill and maybe not take on so much. That's a device that I think would be useful if you feel like it's a regular experience and you don't have a good strategy to um, to address it. That might be something that could do the work for you, where like wellness and technology kind of merge, and we have some nice tools out there. What are your thoughts? like you said, you would come home and you'd be kind of tripped up by it. Did you have any? It's one thing to recover from it, but ideally, you'd want to like not smother it from happening, but like prevent it from flaring up in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't necessarily call it a flare up, more so a drain,
Okay.
like to have those deep conversations with people is emotionally draining, to the point where you just don't have much left. That's why I wish she would have been specific about what she means about like boundaries while giving healing sessions. Like, are you talking about boundaries where maybe they're like trying to take advantage of you in some way?
But
What's up?
I didn't consider that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's this is speculation, but and when she says healing sessions, I'm assuming she means like during like a Reiki or massage or you know, I don't know. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think trying to be mindful in the moment is ultimately the best tool that we all have access to. Trying to be present for people as much as you can. Regulating, like you mentioned, the breaths. I think it's funny. Maybe I've told you this before. There was one day where I was doing some cooking and I had music on and I had heavy metal playing. I looked at my heart rate. It's like 95 or something like that. When typically, like if I'm just standing there chilling, it's like 60. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? Turn the music off. Instantly, my heartbeat drops
But you
back down.
listen to
And I'm
some
like,
intense music, if I
dude, I
recall.
do. I really do. I really do. Um, but, that taught me like, hey, you can do something about this in the moment. Like if you're just sitting there with your heart rate super elevated, even if it's like having a conversation, like you and I having a conversation right now, if it's been an hour and 41 minutes, if my heart rate was like 105, 110 since the beginning an hour and 40 minutes ago, I would be exhausted right now. But if throughout this conversation, I'm utilizing tools to allow myself to keep myself grounded and breathing and slower and keeping my heart rate down, I'm going to have my energy is going to last way longer in a situation like that. So I think you're right. Like tapping into all of the different, I mean, there's so many different tools now, and just trying to ground yourself, stop your energy from being so elevated, because they could say something that could easily, and you don't even know. They just say one thing, boom, your BPM is up 10 beats.
Yeah,
Uh,
my pulse has been up 105 this whole time, but I have Mexican Coke on IV. You can't see it in the camera here, but I've been on a slow drip of Mexican Coke right now.
Geez, you're really getting into the supplements, man. That's something we didn't get into. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, I hope that is helpful. I don't, it's hard to answer that specifically because I don't really know. You probably need more details on that question, but there's some general stuff. And by the way, if you are interested in that Apollo Neuro, you could find that pretty easily, and I think we have a link on our website to it. But if you want to learn more about it, there is an episode. If you search our podcast for Apollo Neuro, it'll probably come up. But what else? I think we covered all the questions that came in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Anything else you want to share before we wrap this up?
Um, no, not really. I'm really stoked on the weight shift stuff. I'm really happy that you're exploring that as well because I'm going to be excited to talk to you about it later on. Yeah, and hear about what you're discovering about it, man. Because I do think it is like you're going to see more of this stuff later for sure. Mark my words. Like
I wish I
people are
had
going
a
to start.
ponytail to test. That's the tough thing.
Yeah, well, there's people that even do like rope flow, where they're like trying to simulate that figure eight style movement. But I really do think that there's something there where, I mean, there is an efficient way to move. Now, within that efficient way to move, there's going to be variation for everyone because people's joints are different. It's like even like a squat stance. Not everyone's going to have the same squat stance with their feet perfectly straight. Some people are going to be toe out. Some people have shallow hip sockets. Some people have really deep hip sockets. Some people have long femurs. Some people have short femurs. There's
That's
so many
making
different things.
excuses for a lot of people to have shitty squat.
I mean, I don't squat with straight feet. They're not crooked, but they're toed out a little bit. My knees naturally track outwards, but I think yeah, there's going to be this this discovery on how to prevent injury and improve performance in a relaxed way not just for running, but also basically any unilateral work that you could do. And I think it starts with just balancing on one foot. So I'm super stoked that you guys talked about that, and I think it's the future.
Cool. Well, this was fun, man. I think we should do these if you're up for it. I had a lot of fun with this. I don't know if anybody will listen to it, but I hope so. And maybe we build on it and get more and more questions. And it'd be nice to get some questions the uh, during the actual stream. But
Yeah, you said there was a call-in function. How does that work? Is there like a
good
number showed
question.
somewhere?
There is a way to do it. I think I have to look at the how-to video again, but there's a video teaching us how to do that with the Riverside software where people can call in, and I think that would be
Okay.
cool. So maybe we'll try
I
that.
think we're fine this time, but next time, if we keep doing these and they get more popular, yeah, we should definitely have that up. But yeah, man, I had a great time. This was
It's good
awesome.
to
It's
connect with
always
you, man.
nice.
We didn't argue. We should argue a little bit more than that, but maybe next. Well,
Hey,
dude,
what if
if
we
there's
don't
anyone out
have
there
to?
listening, appreciate you listening, man, and hope you got value out of it. And look forward to the next one. Have a great day.
Take care, everyone.